If it's not obvious from my thumbnail, the name of this video, my YouTube banner, my profile pic, and numerous Mario references I've had on my channel, then know that I am a fan of Mario and his games, specifically Super Mario Bros. 3. I used to have a holographic Super Mario lunchbox, and one day my boss saw it, and he took it, and he tossed it down an industrial strength compactor. Hole. But why do I love Super Mario Bros. 3? A game so old it was there at the birth of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and the release of I Want It All by Queen. The long answer is in this video. The short answer is, it's fun. A masterpiece, and the epitome of pure 2D platforming joy. We're still in the middle of the summer, and I wanted to touch up on a fun, joyful game. We could have talked about Super Mario Sunshine, but I'm still mad at Nintendo for making me think that FLUDD dies at the end of Sunshine. And before we begin, I know that the footage of this video is of the remake of the game, which has a lot of updated, everything, but that's just so this video looks better for YouTube. Every point I'm about to make holds true between the original and the version I'm showing on screen. So without further stalling, let's jump into it. You play as Mario, or Luigi, depending on your mood. There are 8 worlds in the game, and we'll start there. Each world has its own unique theme. I love all these worlds without exception, but if I was forced to choose my favorite by the internet, my 2 favorite worlds would be Giant Land and Skyland. Giant Land is exactly what it sounds like. A giant land. Throughout the levels, you get larger resolution sprites of almost everything. Pipes, piranha plants, Goombas, blocks. Everything's much bigger except for Mario or Luigi. I love this world because it offers a lot of new eye-catching aesthetics and play styles into the game. Just by looking at it, it's fun. It's a nice twist. You'd think you've mastered the timing to attack enemies, and this small change changes the game in a big way. It looks different but still has the same feel. Mario is still the same lovable plumber he was when you started playing, but everything's just slightly changed enough to keep things interesting. Not to mention not all parts of Giant Land are giant. Some parts of the same level are giant, but then when you go to other areas in the same level, it's normal size again. It's just fun to think about as you're playing. You're thinking to yourself, is this next area going to be giant? Is this next area going to be normal size again? This is one of the strengths of Super Mario Bros. 3, and that while you're playing, you just can't wait to see what they're going to throw at you next. It's a jumbled rhapsody of crazy stuff happening all at once, but done so well that it's not overwhelming. Giant Land is also one of my favorite worlds because it added this infamous part to the game. This area in particular is crazy. You have to control your flow of direction with a pad that changes direction every time you jump on it. So if you're not careful, you might change the pad in the wrong direction or get hit by an enemy. It's also cool because if you jump to one side of the level, you end up immediately on the other side, like an infinite loop. It's bizarre but engaging, and in the middle of a giant themed world. It's short, as you go back to platforming in traditional Mario ways not long after, but it does a good job throwing you off as you play without being frustrating. Also, in the remake, the king at the end of the level gets turned into Donkey Kong Jr. How do you look at this and not laugh? My other favorite world is Skyland, or as I like to call it, Sky Island, inspired by Link's hometown in Skyward Sword. I like this world because at first glance it looks like the world has 3 stages. Like, what's up with that? I'm used to 8 stages at least, and this one has 3. Makes no sense. So you start playing and the first thing you notice is that the levels are fun. That was a joke, guys. All these stages are fun. But in Skyland, you enter this fortress-looking sprite, and one of the things you'll notice about this level as you progress is that it's unusually long. Most stages aren't that long. You can complete them in under 4 to 5 minutes, no big deal. This one stands out because it feels like it goes on for a while. I'm not complaining, and while it's not meant to feel eerie, it's just off-putting enough for players to notice the length. After you complete this fortress, you're in another part of the overworld entirely. And look, there are superstars in the clouds. There are 9 levels. You're seeing that correctly. 9. The fortress sprite is blue instead of gray, and the small part of the overworld you were in is now in the background like a tiny clip, as if you're in the air looking at a tiny island, the same island you were just on. Again, all this small attention to detail just adds world building to the game, and makes me feel like I'm in the sky. See how they did that? They made you start on a small island, then climb a fortress, and now you can see the area you just completed in the background. An accomplishment to what you just overcame. It's either that or I just really love the colors and all the stars on the screen right now. Also, if you ask me, forget the final world of this game, Skyland is the hardest. It requires a lot of precision and platforming and timing, and it's the most nerve-wracking in my opinion. With all that being said, all worlds in this game are carefully thought out and interesting. Iceland is a Nordic country with beautiful scenery, known for its natural landscapes. However, in Super Mario Bros. 3, Iceland is exactly what it sounds like, a world dedicated to ice. They are a slippery slope of platforms that make you lose control of Mario and add some small level of difficulty to playing the game. It's also home to what I would argue is the most difficult level in this game. Seriously, who designed this level? I would argue that if you don't solve this level in just a few minutes, you would quit the game immediately. World 6, level 5 is infamous. I know that because I googled it and there are guides on how to beat this level specifically. You don't need a guide to beat this game, guys. This game is meant to be easy and fun, but a guide? A literal guide on how to beat a level in Super Mario Bros. 3? Come on. My uncle works at Nintendo. He told me that the person who designed this level is the same guy who designed the Electric Dream trash can puzzle in Pokemon Red and Blue. The level requires a power-up that gives you the ability to fly, and if you don't have it, you're not solving the level. Which is the only level with this restriction because you can beat the rest of Super Mario Bros. 3 as Little Mario. I'm surprised there aren't more in-depth studies trying to figure out if the guy who designed this level got fired. I hope he did. Although I've watched enough anime to know the plot twist to this story. The level designer was Shigeru Miyamoto himself. All 8 worlds do an excellent job showing off their chosen themes. Skyland takes place in the sky. I expect a lot of platforming and a lot of pitfalls, maybe a lot of clouds in the sky, and that's exactly what I get. Iceland is very blue in all its stages, with sliding hazards on nearly every stage. Desertland is very, deserty, with mostly orange palette colors as well as pyramids in the background. Theme and aesthetics are a big pillar of Super Mario Bros. 3. This is important because it helps with immersion, which was pinnacle in a 2D platformer at the time of this game's release. The overworlds themselves are all unique and interactive. Desertland is a good example of this. At some point in the world, you encounter some boomerang Koopas, and you get a hammer. If you use the hammer near this obstruction, it actually opens a hidden path. And look, you get rewarded for your exploration efforts and cleverness. You can defeat these red boomerang Koopas, which I mean is attention grabbing on its own. Look at them. They're red. It's weird on its face value. If you defeat them, you get a flute that lets you skip entire worlds. And look, there's even a 3 symbol in the overworld as a little reward. Something that breaks the fourth wall a little. Something small, just for a little fun. This hidden secret is obviously meant to be a reward for people who are replaying the game and may just want to get to Bowser as fast as possible. Or maybe just replay a certain world they prefer. Either way, think about it for a moment. At its core, this particular secret is a method to skip worlds in subsequent playthroughs. This was an idea they had in 1988 for a 2D platformer on the NES. Can you imagine how much thought, love, and care they put into this game? Each world also has some minigame stages and extras just to jumble things up a little bit. You don't have to do them, and I never do because my luck's terrible and I never get lucky in this game. You get things like a 3-card type matching game where you have to stop the images at the right moment, and if you line them up, you get a prize. Mostly 1-ups depending on which image you manage to form. My favorite is the memory match game. Flip 2 cards at a time, and if you get 2 matching cards, you get that power up. These are nice breaks from the main game. They are in no way mandatory and don't last long, so it doesn't take away from your action too long. The fortresses house mini bosses. They're mini bosses because they take 3 hits to beat and aren't that much more threatening than regular enemies. You jump on them 3 times and they die. In later worlds, they have obstacles in their boss rooms or they grow spikes, so your jumps have to be more precise. Castle bosses are all Koopa legs that do the exact same thing. Wave a magic wand around and attack you. But in later stages, the levels are more hazardous and their spells grow larger, making it harder to dodge. Except for this guy who thought it was a good idea to attack Mario while holding his balance on a bouncing, rotating ball. Alright, now, after all that, we can finally talk about the gameplay. This whole previous intro took as long as the opening to Final Fantasy XVI. So as mentioned, you play as Mario or Luigi depending on your mood. Look at this genius intro. You start the game as Mini Mario. You're naturally attracted to hitting the blocks and one of them has a mushroom. All of a sudden you're Large Mario and can take an extra hit. Soon after you can do the same thing and you're Raccoon Mario. Immediately you learn that blocks have a chance for power-ups to allow you to take more hits and unlock special abilities. For the most part, Mario defeats enemies by jumping on them. Some enemies like piranha plants require power-ups to defeat because they can't be stomped on. Mario has a power bar at the bottom of the screen. The fuller it is, the faster Mario goes. Additionally, if you have it at full blast while having a power-up that allows flight, you get to fly real high. If I take advantage of this, I run into a small secret area. It's not a huge secret and it's not a major advantage, but it feels good discovering it. A little extra bonus for me maintaining a charge and keeping my raccoon costume on for this long on the stage. Just like that, in the first level, I've learned everything I need to know. I didn't need yet another tutorial 8 hours into the game to learn how to play. I'm looking at you, Clive. The goal of the levels is simply to get to the end stage within the time limit without dying. And you can do it any way you want. You can just play through the level at your own pace. You can try to avoid every enemy along the way. You can try to destroy every single block and see if there are hidden secrets. It doesn't matter as long as you're done before time's up or you have to start all over. So this is where I go back and tell you guys, look at this game. It's fun. I'm defeating enemies, I'm getting power-ups, I'm losing power-ups. That's it. I personally like to take some time to explore the stages because there might be some nice secrets, like this music note block. I hit it and I get a superstar, which makes me invincible and hopefully increases my subscription count on YouTube. This is literally the game. To help you advance even further into the game, levels in the overworld have power-ups. Mario is famous for power-ups. It's like all people talk about when they talk about Mario. Power-ups are a staple in his games. Unless, of course, if you're playing any Mario and Luigi game, Mario Odyssey, Yoshi's Island, or my favorite Mario game of all time, Mario Teaches Typing. They give Mario unique ability depending on the power-up he obtained. They can be found in levels and blocks, or they can be found scattered randomly in the overworld. Heck, after each world, Princess Peach literally forces special items into your inventory without you having to do anything. When you get a power-up in the overworld or from special stages, you keep the power-up in your power-ups tab. You can access this tab before you enter a stage and have a power-up before you start. This helps with your advancement and keeps gameplay interesting. You don't have to enter the stage as Fire Mario, enter it as Frog Mario. Maybe one stage is giving you a hard time. Enter it with infinite power and fly indefinitely. The game doesn't hold your hand, but it gives you a plethora of options along the way. It's like playing Final Fantasy 16 in story mode, holding your hand the entire time. You just have to press buttons sometimes so you can pretend to yourself that you're good at the game. Oh god, it's the sun. It's the sun that, oh, guys, I'm sorry. This is a very, very terrible childhood memory for me. I'll be right back.
3 hours later.
Alright guys, I'm back. I just finished crying. Anyway, the sun attacks you and you can't attack it. So you learn to either avoid it or use a superstar to kill it. The point is, even this gameplay mechanic is basic. They taught you how the game works while playing without explicitly telling you can't jump on the enemy. If you try, you get damaged. If you're not Little Mario, you have an extra chance to avoid it or die. Also, its visuals alone should be clue enough. Hey, maybe I shouldn't touch those spiky points because it equals bad. This is one of the main reasons I enjoy NES games, because while I play modern AAA games that are highly rated and loved, and also Diablo 4, I'm a firm believer that a simple game can be a fun game. It's at this point I have to say what I fear a lot of people might be thinking. Superstar. Super Mario Bros. 3 came out on the NES. Every game on the NES was easy. I won't spend too much time on this point because I want to focus mostly on Super Mario Bros. 3, but I'll give you a real good example of a NES game. A NES game that is critically acclaimed, is very complicated, but is considered a hard game by the general gaming community. I know you guys probably haven't heard of it, but it's called Final Fantasy. The first Final Fantasy has multi-level stories to it, an in-game clock system, multiple battle options, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's a wonder of an accomplishment for a game that came out on the NES. But I think you can see the point I'm trying to make before I even make it. You need to devote yourself to Final Fantasy, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes people want to devote themselves to a game with 22 different mechanics, a complex story, a huge open world to explore with no clear direction, multiple phase enemies with complicated battle formulas. Does Elden Ring come to mind to anyone? But on the other side of the coin, sometimes you just want to come home, have an In-N-Out burger, and kill a few hours with a calm, easy to pick up game just to relax. And that's what Super Mario Bros. 3 is to me. You can pick up Super Mario Bros. 3 immediately, put it down for a day, and pick up right where you left off. Finally, Final Fantasy is a game where you'll need a minute to get back in the rhythm of things if you stop playing. Whereas Super Mario Bros. 3, you can pick a random spot and most people will immediately go with the flow. It's a type of game you can play with a family. For example, if I'm playing with a friend, I can look at my friend who doesn't exist because I live alone and say, hey, I'm gonna get a monster real quick. Can you finish the level for me? And my imaginary friend who doesn't exist, but if he did, could absolutely finish a level for me before I get back. Also, my imaginary friend is a girl. This is what I mean by simple. The game goes out of its way to be playable to anyone at any time, and there's just something enjoyable in that fact. The idea of simply showing Super Mario Bros. 3's colorful scenery to a random stranger, seeing Mario jump around and saying to this random person, do you want to play? And they say yes, that they can just play and you and everyone around you immediately knows what's happening in front of you. I think Nintendo hit the nail on the head with that idea. Speaking of colorful scenery, let's talk about colors. Yeah, I'm still talking. You might want to pause, get your daily workout out of the way and come back. I'll still be here. The game just looks fun. Mario is the strapping red sprite that's running on screen that you control. He stands out from the rest of the environment but still manages to blend in. That's important for a platformer. But Mario is bright and colorful without straining the eyes. I have no other way to say this other than to say this. He's just fun to look at. I can't wait for people to take that out of context later. Mario is jumping on stage, dodging attacks, or getting hit by them if I'm the one playing, but the stages are colorful and still maintain that feeling of having an adventure. It's unique and interesting. It shows itself into the mind's eye. Back then and even now, that's important. Visually, you don't want a game to look boring because subconsciously, people will think it's boring. Here's a good example. Everyone is familiar with Metroid, right? I mean, I hope you are. If you're not, check out this video from this, random YouTuber, I've never heard of this guy, who summarized the entire plot of Metroid Prime Remastered. While the original Metroid is still critically acclaimed to this day, the general community believes it's aged poorly. You have to be in the mood to play it, and one of the main reasons for that is the looks. Maps will literally share the same color palettes and assets, making it hard to navigate. Notice that even though Samus stands out and is easy to control visually, you probably wouldn't want to play this game, which is a shame because no one ever really complains about the original Metroid's controls that much because everyone's too caught up talking about how hard it is to navigate because everything looks the same. And these two games came out roughly the same time. The original Metroid is a classic for completely different reasons to Super Mario Bros. 3, but one of the things that doesn't help it is how clunky it looks. I'm willing to bet a lot of superstars that whether or not you've played this game before or not, just by looking at this, you're not very interested. Zero Mission came out years later and added a bunch of visual advancements to the game, and to no one's surprise, everyone talked about how grateful they were for the visual updates to this 2D game. I mean, the jump here is obvious, but the point is the same. People care about how a game looks because it affects their mood. If the game looks boring and uninteresting, it'll be boring and uninteresting. Super Mario Bros. 3 doesn't have that problem. If you're really playing this game, you can close your eyes after you're done playing it and replay the game in your head because it does a beautiful job in embedding itself in your mind. Everything has its specific style and color palette to it, and it's enjoyable. You couldn't say the same thing about the original Metroid. If you ask someone who played the original Metroid to close their eyes and describe the first thing they see, chances are very high the next couple words that come out of their mouth is going to be Justin Bailey. While that might be a funny reference, those words don't describe what makes the original Metroid enjoyable. Speaking of enjoyable, the other thing that makes Super Mario Bros. 3 a classic is the music. The music matches perfectly with the game on literally every level and world. For example, when I listen to this, I imagine an oasis, land surrounded by water, but a heavy water environment nonetheless. And behold, this is the main theme of Waterland, an oasis level with land surrounded by water, but a heavy water environment nonetheless. Same thing for Iceland. The music sounds like the perfect crystal tone to an environment that's cold, frozen over by ice. The perfect music tones are met when playing. Humor me for a moment. Don't look at the screen and listen just for a quick second. What do you imagine when you're hearing that? If you said anything other than a desert oasis or the God of War game that took place in Egypt that we never got, I honestly don't believe you. And behold, the music you heard was from a desert oasis level in Super Mario Bros. 3. Let's talk about World 8 now. World 8, also known as the Dark World, is the last world of the game. By NES gaming standards, this should be the hardest and darkest world in the game. And man, did they take the darkness idea to a whole new level. Look at this. They literally made the whole world dark. Do you know what this affects gameplay wise? Absolutely nothing. It's almost like a joke. Mario's path on the overworld is guided. It's not like I can get lost. This doesn't do anything but help set up the atmosphere, and just like that, you're curious and hooked on this game. If that's not enough to convince you, how about this? Bam! Mario gets grabbed by a hand while moving over odd-shaped stage icons. Again, wanna know what this changes gameplay-wise? Absolutely nothing. Are we both standing here wondering what the heck just happened? Yup. Does it make you want to play this game? I bet it does. After all, you probably need a break from Baldur's Gate 3. The final boss, Jack Black, is the most unique boss in the game. You have to trick him to lose by dying to fall damage, which is hard to do because Jack Black has maybe flopped once, 2 times max. Making him fall from grace any more than that is a Shadow Hall attempt. You defeat him by making him break blocks as he tries to jump on you. Get it? Your own weapon has been used against you. He took away your jumping ability and is using it on you now. This is exactly the same. he pulled on you at the end of Mario and Luigi Paper Jam. Anyone remember that? When you try to use paper power on him in that game, it doesn't work. Not only does he turn you into paper, he tries to get bonus damage off you. That moment nearly gave me a damn heart attack. Like, what the f? Anyway, after you trick Bowser, you save Princess Peach, who informs you she's in another castle. I mean, come on. I'm done. I'm satisfied here. That's the end of my rating. That's the end of my praise. Nintendo wins. All right, guys. Before we wrap up this video for real, it's time. We need to talk about this if we're going to give it a fair critique of the game. The criticisms. I will admit, while it's an easy game to master, it definitely has its difficult segments. Without talking about World 8, the game can sometimes be annoyingly impossible. Sometimes you might get lost and have no idea which way to go. Sometimes you're overwhelmed on screen and can't avoid getting hit. Sometimes your timing is off. And sometimes, just sometimes, Miyamoto needed a good laugh. Even to this day, I end up dying. And of course I die because of small slip-ups or because I got hit by an enemy. I'll claim I'm pretty damn good at video games. I won't claim I'm perfect. There are definitely segments and levels in this game that I have to rage quit on. While rare, the game can be unfair and I can't really tell you why. I'll once in a while stare at a section of the game and ask myself, what were they going for here? And I never figured it out. If I had to guess, they wanted the players to use power-ups before they entered the stage, so they have a purpose, but I just don't know. There are just a few sections of the game where the difficulty spikes to infinity and takes away from the flow of the game, mainly in the mini-boss fortress levels later in the game. Here's an example. So let's say you're on the final boss of a world and you die. Not only do you have to start all over, but you have to chase the boss because they literally move off in the overworld. That's really annoying. Instead of jumping straight back into the action, I have to chase the boss. What if they landed on a space I haven't cleared yet? That would mean I would have to clear a stage before I get to the fight again. I know I said this game is simple and short and repeatable and replayable, but the reason boss levels are annoying to die on is because the stages literally move in slow motion. I mean literally. If you'll notice, final boss levels, minus Bowser, control the speed of Mario, not vice versa. I think this is fine. It literally happens 8 times in the game and adds a sense of dread, which again is fine. It's a boss level. It's meant to make you feel like a challenge is approaching. But the issue is when you replay the level, I don't know. I just want to get back to the boss. Now I have to literally wait. Can you see why this might be annoying? I can definitely see a person who died at a boss level say to themselves, yeah, I'm taking a break, or I think I'll play again later, or heaven forbid, you end up saying to yourself, you know what? I think I'm gonna go play Redfall. Sometimes the game has the right to control its own pace against the player's will, because if it's utilized correctly, like in this very game, it acts as a perfectly acceptable gameplay mechanic. But not here. Not like this. Not when it's a boss level, and I die, and I can't skip it or fast forward. What if I die in the same spot twice? Wouldn't that be frustrating? I get the chances of that happening are low, because if you got in this far, you know what you're doing. But it's still painfully slow, and even one death can destroy your momentum. There's no real way to combat this other than to learn from your mistakes, which again is hard because sometimes the levels are chaotic. It's another reason I chose to show you this game on the Switch in its remake format. In the original, you can't save. You have to more or less play the game in a single setting, non-stop, or lose all your progress. In the remakes, you can save basically whenever. On the Switch, you can quick save or literally rewind gameplay. It might seem cheap, but I like to think people will forgive themselves for doing this for a NES game that came out nearly 35 years ago. But if you ask someone who played the game when it came out, they'll be able to tell you that the game could be frustrating due to some unfair sections. And when researching criticism of the game, the save option always pops up. Alright, conclusion. If you ask those who played the game when it came out what they think about it, they'll praise it. They'll all have something nice to say about it. It was more than that, it was a fun game. This literally brought families together and reduced stress. We play games because they're fun, but sometimes we play them because we need stress relief and escape from the real world. That's what Super Mario Bros. 3 was for a lot of people. They would come home from work, from school, from a rough day, and there Mario would be waiting for them to go on a dangerous adventure, but one that focused more on the adventure than anything else. Sure, it was dangerous, but you knew you'd be okay. It threw dramatic flair at you, but not dread. It was easy, and it felt good talking to other people about how much fun you were having because they were all doing the same thing when they got home. It's the reason people love Super Mario 64 even today. It's basic, it's fun, it lets you jump right into the action, and it literally thanks you for playing it. Alright, that's it. You can go now. If you like this video, please comment, like, and subscribe. I just wanted to vent about this game before I shift gears and tell you all why you should buy Final Fantasy 16 in the next video. I'll see you guys then.